the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. We're gathering here at Al-Hijrah Islamic Center with Travis. Just so you remember my name, I'm Johari. And I have learned from the brothers that you spent some time learning about Islam. How long?
Uh, I spent a few years, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Actually meeting with a friend from Pakistan, like weekly. But I mean, it was more mutual discussion.
Yeah.
So I was very familiar with her on that, and then recently, the last few months, more pursuing it. More, not maybe as much book reading, but just the pondering of making the conversion and stuff like that. So once I kind of investigating it, I guess you could say, or researching it, it was kind of an easy decision for me. So
I like to think, Travis, that rather than converting, that people who come from your background are really just embracing. That there are many fundamentals that we already have. Now we are just embracing some additional fundamentals. I don't know how much time you spent in the Old Testament, but this prayer which they're making now, it says in the book of Nehemiah that the prophet Ezra raised hands to the Lord, bowed and prostrated. So we're not doing anything different than what the prophets have done throughout the millennia. So let's go through these fundamental actions. The first, to acknowledge that you believe that there's only one God. And for people who come from, I grew up Episcopalian, but that's identifying that all of the other prophets, that they're not God, that Jesus is not God, but Jesus is a prophet of Allah, sent with miracles, with an amazing birth, but the one who said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That Jesus is a prophet among the prophets. The second is acknowledging that Muhammad is the prophet that they were talking about that is to come, and that he is the last of those prophets. The second, to pray at the prescribed times, 5 times a day. The morning prayer between dawn and sunrise, and then there's a long break, and then the noon prayer, a short break, and you can pray anytime until the afternoon prayer. I like to think, because this finger is longer, that it's when your shadow becomes long, about 2.5 times your height, if you're calculating. The shadows are long. This is the afternoon prayer. And then a short interval, and then the time of sunset. And then a small break, and then the last prayer at dusk. Interesting phenomenon, dusk is when the sun no longer contributes light to the night sky, and a long break until dawn, when the sun begins to contribute light again to the night sky, and then the interval between dawn and sunrise is the morning prayer. These 5 prayers a day, when the Prophet was asked, what is Islam? He said to acknowledge, that's why it's an action, that there's only God, one God, and to believe in all of the prophets, culminating with Muhammad, to pray 5 times a day, to give back from the excess of the wealth which Allah has given you. There is a portion of your wealth that does not belong to you. It is given to you to be entrusted for those who, for whatever reason, don't manage money well. Maybe they lost everything when they became a widow. If all of the wealth had been with them, it would all be gone with their deceased. But there's a portion of their wealth that is with you. The homeless person who's lost their residence, they've lost everything, but there's a portion of their wealth which Allah has entrusted to you. And there are other categories of these people who are eligible, but the money that you have in excess, a portion of that is actually their wealth. So when you give it, you're not giving from what you have, you're giving from what they have. The fourth, to fast during the 9th lunar month of the year called Ramadan. These are things that I know you know, but I want for us to all know that the 9th month of the lunar calendar, in this country, the Native American people, they used to say many moons ago, meaning many months ago. People around the world who fish or who farm, they're in touch with the cycle of the sun in these 5, and they're in touch with the phases of the moon. They need it for fishing, they need it for farming. And so we still use the lunar calendar, and so the 9th month of the lunar calendar is called Ramadan. When that month comes, we have been told, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Fasting has been ordered for you, kama kutiba alladhina min qablikum, as it was prescribed for the people before. So all people have been given fasting. If you go Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Zoroastrian, Mormon, everyone has a tradition of fasting. The native people of this country, even though in America they talked about the Father Moon and Mother Sky, but they had fasting as part of the institution to connect with their Creator. And so we fast from the beginning of the month of Ramadan until the end, from dawn until sunset. Not from sunrise to dusk, not from dawn to dusk, but from dawn to sunset. Abstaining from food, from drink, and from the feeding of our passions. Those passions, they could be romance, they could be road rage, but to cool your spirit during the hours of the fast and turn your attention to the one that sustains you. That month is called Ramadan, and it cycles through the solar calendar every 33 years. So this year it will be a little earlier than last year, a little earlier, and in 33 years it will be right back to the same place as it is today. The last pillar, to perform the pilgrimage to Mecca, to visit the house established by Abraham and his family, and purified by the Prophet Muhammad of idolatry that occurred between the time of Abraham and Muhammad. It has now been preserved as a place for the worship of only one God. This period of Hajj occurs in this month, the month of Al-Hijrah. On the 9th day of that lunar month, people will gather on the plains of Arafah, dressed in simple clothing, saying that we are answering the call from our father Abraham to worship only you. 6 million people. I'm like, whenever I think about this. In the book of Matthew in the New Testament, Paul writes that you must be born again. That you must go through a transition where you will be freed from your sins that you might enter. There are only 2 opportunities for this in Islam. The one is the taking of Shahadah, which we're doing today. Because it is an affirmation that Allah, whatever I did before, that was without a fuller knowledge of you. And so today, when you make this transition, Allah will wipe your slate clean again. as they say in the book of Matthew, can I be born again do I have to go into my mother's womb? No, it is by faith that you will make this transition. And for those who are not in your circumstance today, they will make the journey to Hajj, asking Allah to forgive them of a lifetime of sins. Alhamdulillah, it is an amazing, as you saw, an amazing journey, and our prayers go out for those who lost their lives recently in the stampede. That Allah would accept their Hajj and tell them into. These 5 things are the 5 fundamental actions of Islam. The beliefs in Allah, in His books, all of them culminating with the Quran, but the only one we believe that is in the original form is the Quran. Not in English, not in Spanish, not in Chinese, but in the Arabic language as it was revealed. And they just recently found an original copy of the Quran, so that one can say this book, the words of it have been preserved for the last 14 centuries. To believe in Allah's malaika, they like to translate this as angels, but I come from the Michael Landon generation, so I don't like to say angel because it reminds me of like God with wings and something. Right? But malaika, a kind of creature that obeys Allah and never disobeys Allah. That their physical nature is not like ours. We have a physical nature in which we can choose with our free will to obey or to disobey. Now, I don't want to be too long, but I want to let you know something amazing. The Quran describes that there was a day in which Allah showed the angels the first human being. They said, we want you, Allah wants you to submit yourself to them, humankind. All of them did except for another kind of creature who was there, a creature we call jinn. The easiest way to think of them is like Aladdin,
Genie.
and the 40 thieves and all of that stuff. Genies. They are creatures made from fire, but they are like us in that they have free will, and they are like malaika, that their physical reality is different. And so in this company of man, jinn, and malaika, this particular jinn said, I have free will, I'm not going to submit myself to human beings because I'm better. I'm better. I'm better, why? Because I'm made of something different. That day was the birth of racism, sexism, class. I'm better because I'm American. I'm better because I'm Somali. I'm better, right? I'm better because I'm rich. I have a PhD. I'm better, right? My gray matter is made out of something different. That day, all of the Malaika submitted to Adam, except for this one called Iblis, who was a jinn. On that day, Allah informed them that I know something about the human being that you don't know. Human beings have free will like jinn. They will make mistakes. They will do terrible things. But they can do something that Malaika can never do. Malaika can only obey Allah. Human beings can say, you know what? I know that